Hey guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we're going to create this project you can see right here on top. This is a tour card or a tour blog. This is a blog template or a card, which let me show you how it works. So if you hover, you can see we have some beautiful animations. So we only show the heading and the date of publishing, and then the description is hidden, but when you hover you can see the cool animation. So this might be a blog card that you can use in your websites, whereby you just map through these cards and then you can add a link that goes to the blog details. So let's see how we can create these using HTML and CSS. So as always, I do have two files, index.html and style.css. The first thing, let's link the CSS to the HTML file, save, and then the next thing we can do now is to go to the CSS file, and then the font I'm using is called Nunito. So let's head over to fonts.google.com and then search for Nunito. Click get font and then get embed code, and then you'll see the import. Click on the import and then make sure you don't have other fonts. If you do have, you use these delete buttons, and then let's copy these. So just copy these and paste it into our CSS file, and then let's get out of there. Right, the next thing you might realize is that this image, so you can use FreePic, you can use Unsplash to look for these images, but if you want the exact image I'm using, you can go to my GitHub repository. So github.com/TechWithTwin/TikTok-projects, and then look for a project called blog v1, and then inside the blog v1 you can see we have a thumbnail. So this is the thumbnail. Just copy it or download here. All right, so let's continue. The next thing is that let's add the default CSS styles, whereby we remove margins on all elements. So the star selects all elements, and then a padding of 0 as well, and then a box sizing of border box. I have already explained about why we do this, but I know the one that might have some challenges is the box sizing border box. This one is used to make sure that if I give this card a width of 300 pixels, and then I go ahead and add some paddings, paddings add some space from the element to the content. Like here you can see the padding. If I say this one is 300 pixels and then I add some padding, I don't want the final result to be 300 plus this padding plus the right padding. I want the 300 to be inclusive of the padding, so it gets squeezed inside. So if I say this is still be 300 pixels, if I say the padding is 10 pixels, then the padding will be added here and here, and the content will take up the remaining space. That's what the box sizing border box means. So, all right, so let's also focus on the body. As we have added the font, so we just need to use it. So we can say font family, and then you say Nunito. Just copy the name, this name, or you can go for in Google. They'll show you what you need to use, but let's just focus on adding that. All right, that's it. Let's go back to the HTML, and we are going to create a card. So this is just a card, or you can call it a blog, whatever you want. And then inside, I'm going to wrap. So this is what I want to do. So I have this whole card. In the card, I have the image wrapper. Inside the image wrapper, I have an image. I don't want to style the image alone. And then after that, I have a details details section. Inside the details, we have a top div with the heading and the date, and then a bottom div which has the description. All right, so let's do that. Let's create a div with a class of image wrapper, and then inside the image wrapper, let's create an image. So I don't have the image right here, so I can just look for the image and paste it. So that's the image. So I can reference it in my HTML and say the image is /thumb.jpg. So in Linux or in the Linux environments, the specifies the current directory, this current directory. So if I do ./thumb.jpg, that goes to the current directory and then looks for this file name, right? And then the alt, we can say placeholder. Then I said the next thing I want is to create a details div. So we can say details. And then inside the details, let's add another div. The first div will have a heading, and this one will say safaris in Kenya 3-day tour. And then the date we use a paragraph 19-05-2025. And then the description is a paragraph. Let's add a paragraph, and then let's copy this text. You can come here and copy this and paste that. You can create a simple description to work with. All right. Okay, so the next thing is to go live. So let me look for the extension to go live. All right, so I have seen it. Let me go live. All right, and then so after going live, this is what we get. So let me make this big. You can see now we get the very huge image. The image is not sized. And I don't want to style this image from CSS. I want to style it from HTML, because if you style it with the CSS, it will first load a huge image, then CSS tries to crop it. So I'm going to the images and then the image tag, and then I'll say a width of 400. All right, you can see now it has started to respect some of the styles. And that's it all for the HTML. Let's go to the CSS, and then what we need to start with is the card itself. So the dot card, we give it a width. So we don't want the card to be very huge. So let's give it a width. We can say a width of 400 pixels. And then let's go to the body and try to position this card in the middle. So we can write display flex, justify content, center. All right. Let's add some paddings, because you can see this card is too close to the edges. So we can say padding of 2 rem. All right. Now the card looks how we wanted it to be. So the finished version, you might see that the finished version has some box shadows. So let's add some box shadows. And in box shadows, we don't want to focus on box shadows. So there are tools online that can help us generate box shadows. You don't need to get caught up in the box shadows. So let me look for the box shadow. So the website I'm looking forward to is called getcsscan.com/box shadow css-box shadow example. So in this website, you can just go ahead and copy a box shadow you like. So like for instance, I like this box shadow. So you just click it and copy it and paste it in our card. We don't want to use more of our time running about box shadows, and then you can see the box shadow has shown. I think we can settle for that. So after that, you can see now the details. There are too many in the details here. We say that this div is called details. So this is the detail. We only have 2 elements. We have the image inside the image wrap, and then we have the details. And inside the details, we have one div and a paragraph. This is the paragraph. So the first div has the heading and the paragraph, which is the date. So we can go ahead and call the details and give it some, let's give it some width, or let's add some paddings to the details. So we can say dot details, and then a padding of, so I want a top padding of something like 0.6 rem, and then all the other sides I want to add 1 rem. So the reason I used a different is because I don't want here the height here to be very huge. So that's why I went for that. I think we can take a greater box shadow. I think this is okay. I want a very huge box shadow. So we can just go ahead and paste that. Save. Yeah, I think that box shadow now pops up. So the next thing is that the card, you can see the edges are too sharp. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to the card and giving it a border radius of 5 pixels. And then you save, you can see now the image still overflows. So we can grab the image wrapper. So the image wrapper, and then we grab the image. So the image wrapper is inside. The image wrapper is what holds the image. So this is the image. So what we can do here is now the image, we can give it z image dash wrapper. Yeah. I think it still looks nice. I think we don't have to do much, but it's good to give a fixed height to the images. So that you can have consistent look. So we go to the image wrapper and say a height of 15 rem. Let's see. I think 50 rem is okay. Maybe 17. Right, let's skip to there. The next thing, so we are giving the image wrapper a fixed height, and then we are going to crop up the image. So we go and grab the image. It's in the image wrapper. Then we grab the image and say a width of 100%, a height of 100%, and a box. No, let's use an object fit. So let me show you. When you do that, you can see the image is squeezed. So you just specify an object fit, and then you want it to cover. And then now you can see the image pops. The next thing, let's go to the card and give it an overflow of hidden. So we can say overflow hidden. And then now you can see the smooth edges now look nice. So in the details as well, let's give it a display of flex so that we can give them a gap. So we can say display flex, and then flex direction, let's do column, and a gap of 10 pixels. All right, you can see now we get some spaces. All right, so the next thing is now to add the animations. So let's now continue and add some animations. So what I'm going to do is now I want to display this card here. This bottom part, I want to display it absolute. All right, so I want to display it absolute so that I can start animating it. So what I'm going to do is now in the card, I'm going to give the card a position of relative. So we can position everything from the card. So we can come here and say position relative. Okay. After saying position relative there, let's go to the details. The details is the whole content. Let's give it a position of absolute. All right, you can see now it is hidden. We gave it a position of absolute. It is hidden because we need to place it. So, and then we want it to be at bottom 0. All right, you can see the text there. I think we need to increase the height of the image wrapper to something like 23 rem. All right. So now the details is overlaying the card. That's why we had to give the details a position of absolute and the card a position of relative. So also let's give the details background color of white. All right, that looks nice. So what's up? What's next should we do? Make sure we also want to give it a width of 100% so that it can fill the whole width. And then from there, Let's now target the details paragraph. So you can see this is the details. And what we want to animate is to show this paragraph and hide it. So we can come here and say details and then the child P tag. So this one corrects the direct child. So we're not going to focus to select this. We are going to select the direct child by using the greater than sign symbol in CSS. You select the direct child. The first thing is to give it an opacity of 0. Okay, it is hidden. The next thing, let's remove its height. So we can say max height is 0. All right, that looks nice. The next thing is let's push it to the bottom. We say that we can use a transform or to translate some elements. So the paragraph, we want to translate it Y and push it down 10 pixels. Now, why it was here, we push it 10 pixels down. It's now somewhere here, virtually. And then we want to animate it as soon as there is a hover effect. All right. Now, we want when someone hovers over the card. So we can say dot card. And then when you hover over the card, hovering means taking the mouse over it. So what will happen is now we want to reduce the opacity of the card itself. So let me show you the finished version. You can see when I hover, the card also has some faded opacity and an increased box shadow. So what I'm going to do is now we change the opacity and the box shadow. You can go to our website and look for the now deepest box shadow. I think this one looks nice. We can just copy this and paste it. And then now if we hover, you can see now the box shadow now becomes a bit darker and all that. So the next thing is that when you hover, you want the cursor to still be pointing. So we can just go to the card and say cursor pointer. All right. So if now I go back and hover, you can see now it looks a bit nice. So the next thing is now during this state, we want to show the paragraph. So we can go back here and say dot card. And then whenever the card hovers, and then we grab the details and then the paragraph, the direct child. So we grab the state. Whenever there is this state, go ahead and grab the details and the paragraph, which is the direct child. And then we want to make sure the opacity now gets back to 1. And then you remember we did a max height of 0. So let's now make sure the max height is fit content. We want it to fit the content. And after doing that, let's see. You can see now we achieved that, but we also need to transform it. Remember we translated it Y backwards, so we can translate. They want to translate just the Y axis and then 0. Wanted to go immediately to 0. So now if we hover, you can see we get the required animation, but now there is no easing. It is just spontaneous. So we want to make sure it's easing. So we can go to the details here and come here and say, so now in the details paragraph, we want to transition. So we can transition all 0.4 seconds. So we're adding a transition. So let's see. You can see now there is the details. So the animation is working well for the paragraph. So let's go to the details and add a transition as well. So we want this one to be a bit faster. So we can say transition. And then let's do maybe 0.3 seconds. All right, so see. All right. So now let's go to the paragraph. Let's not transition everything. Let's only transition the opacity. So we can say opacity 0.4 seconds and max height 0.4 seconds. So let's see. I think we can remain with the, okay. And then you can see now it's animating a bit smoother. So the next thing, let's go to the card because you're still changing something on the card. Let's add a transition to the card and say a transition. Because the card we changed the box shadow and the opacity, so we're just going to do 0.2 seconds. Now let's see. Now everything looks nice. All right. So yeah, so also, so for the paragraph, I think we can give it a fixed height. So you can experiment with the heights and come up with a very nice height, such that now if I hover, the transition becomes smooth. So I just removed the max height fit content transition. And then now if you hover over here, you can see now the transition looks a bit nice. And that's it, guys. That's how you can create this beautiful blog card. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you.